Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has sought the meaning of justice. From the divine temples of truth to the courts of human reason, every law, every decree was born from one question: what is right? The philosophy of law is more than a system. It is a mirror of the soul and how we live with one another. As the light of reason meets the law of faith, wisdom emerges. Welcome to Imhotep Nexus Mindspace, where law, faith, and philosophy converge.
All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to get into the philosophy of law, and we'll be guided by the incredible work of Professor Antonio Iacarino. We're going to ask a big question. Is law just about rules, or is it something way deeper? Something about our shared human experience?
So I really want to start with this question right here. Because, we usually think of the law as this kind of dusty old book of regulations, right? Something that's just handed down to us and we have to follow it. But what if it isn't? What if it's actually a living, breathing part of our human journey?
And that leads us right into our first big idea. We need to get beyond the rulebook. We're going to try to shift our whole perspective from seeing law as just some fixed text on a page to really understanding it as this dynamic, lived experience. So you've got two different ways of looking at this. On one side, there's what's called positive law. That's the black and white stuff, the formal rules written in the law books. But on the other side, you've got this much richer, broader idea, law as an experience. And this view, it goes beyond just what the rules are, and it starts asking why they even exist and how they actually shape our day-to-day lives.
What this whole philosophy is, really, is an invitation to rethink thought itself. It's asking us to put our old assumptions aside, to kind of reject these rigid, fixed ideas, and just approach the whole concept of law with a free spirit, ready for a real conversation.
Okay, so this brings us to the real heart of the matter, law as a human experience. This is all about something called the dialogic relational model, which is a fancy way of saying that law is basically a constant conversation, and people like you and me, we're the ones driving it. And get this is a total game changer. Law isn't a static thing. It's an event. It's not something we possess. It's not something a government just forces on us. No. Instead, it's this ongoing process that's actively asking for our presence, our attention, and our participation. We're not just subjects of the law. We are active participants in it. So, what are the building blocks of this legal event? Well, they're these big concepts you see here. Things like personhood, truth, and justice. They aren't just abstract ideas floating around. The way we define them, the way we understand them, actually shapes our entire legal world. They're the very vocabulary we use to build our system of law. And that brings us to this incredibly powerful idea. Truth is life, law follows life. Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't saying that our lives have to conform to some rigid, pre-written law. It's saying the complete opposite. It means law has to be alive. It has to be dynamic enough to follow the pulse of human life, of truth as it's actually happening in our world. Now, if law has to follow the pulse of life, then we're going to need a vision for where that life is heading. And that brings us to the idea of utopia. But hold on. I know what you're thinking. Forget the image of some impossible fantasy world. We're going to completely reframe utopia as a practical, hands-on tool for changing our reality. But to really get this new idea of utopia, we first have to understand its opposite, retrotopia. This is that nostalgic feeling that, things were just better back in the day. It's a view that's always looking backward, and because of that, it completely shuts down any possibility of a better future. And this is the alternative, a concrete utopia. See, this isn't about escaping reality at all. It's about diving headfirst into it. It's a smart, rational critique of what's wrong right now. But it doesn't just stop there. It's guided by a vision of what is actually possible, and it's actively looking for real-world strategies to make it happen. Pope Paul VI actually broke this down beautifully into three functions. First up, utopia has a critical function. It forces us to question the way things are. Second, it has a prophetic function. It opens our eyes to possibilities we've been ignoring and points us toward a new future. And finally, its creative function. This is what energizes us. It drives social change through the sheer power of the human spirit and heart. But, having a big vision is one thing. How do we actually apply it to the messy reality of everyday life? Well, the answer lies in something called prudence. This is a kind of practical wisdom that's so important it's been called the charioteer of virtues, because it's the one that guides all the others. And let's be super clear about what prudence means here. We're not talking about just being timid or overly cautious. Not at all. This is the highest form of practical wisdom. It's the incredible skill of taking a big, general principle and applying it thoughtfully to a specific, unique, real-world situation.
Aristotle had this fantastic metaphor for this. He said science is like using a rigid ruler. It's perfect for measuring things that are straight and predictable and never change. But prudence, and by extension the law, well, it deals with the complicated, messy, ever-changing world of human beings. And for that, you need a flexible ruler, one that can actually bend and adapt to the unique curves of each situation without snapping.
This quote from the philosopher Norberto Bobbio just nails it. He says, the goal of prudence isn't to harvest a bunch of certainties, but to plant productive doubts. It's this constant questioning that prevents power from becoming absolute. It's what stops a monopoly on force from becoming a monopoly on truth.
All right, let's bring all these threads together now in our final section. Toward a new humanism. The ultimate goal here, the big prize, is to see law as an expert in humanity itself, a system that is truly in service of people.
So the purpose of law and this incredible vision is nothing less than to build a renewed society. And to do that, it needs three things we've been talking about: the courage to act, the memory of our past, and that powerful idea of a sane and human utopia to guide us into the future.
And this new humanism? Well, according to Pope Francis, it really rests on three fundamental pillars, three fundamental rights.
First, there's the right to culture. That means everyone should have access to knowledge that makes us more human, not knowledge that's used to control us. Second, the right to hope. And this isn't some passive wish. It's an active responsibility we have for ourselves and our world. And finally, the right to peace, a real commitment to making sure unity always wins out over conflict.
In the end, all of these huge, grand ideas really boil down to a simple but incredibly powerful practice: I care. It's a call for all of us to engage in a kind of communal thinking, where our very first principle is to make sure that absolutely no one gets left behind.
So we end up right back where we started, but maybe with a whole new way of looking at things. If law really is a shared human journey, not a fixed text, but a living event, then the final question really is for all of us. What is our role in building it?
Every idea closes like a chapter, yet truth never ends. Continue your journey into thought, law, and philosophy. If you find this lesson interesting, don't forget to subscribe, share, and stay connected, because every idea builds the nexus. This is Imhotep Nexus Mindspace, where intellect finds order.